has actually trained many students, some of whom are scholars actually now in the area of peace and development studies. Now it is Institute of Peace, Security and Development Studies. So Professor John Akec has been contributing a lot in academia, but also as part of the think tank in the country, and he has contributed a lot in raising awareness so that people also contribute in peace. One of the recent contributions he made is actually the campaign against river dredging, which actually stopped the whole campaign. The campaign is stopped, and the leadership of this country said, look, let us keep it here. Let us go and study it first. Let us study its benefits and implications on our social, economic, and political context before we can proceed. And that is actually the conclusion. Let us give him a round of applause. It is not easy for him to take that decision because our context is very fragile. Whatever decision you take, you have to calculate it well. But he did that, and I'm very sure he did it for the benefit and for the good of this country. And I know many people actually remember him because of the leadership he took. Some of us, we supported the campaign because we believe that the people of South Sudan, actually, they are matured enough to be consulted and have a say to whatever major projects that will be undertaken in this country. So, Professor John Akec, it is our pleasure to have you to give actually this presentation on emerging issues in peace research. So the floor is yours, and Dr. Charles will be moderating the discussion afterwards. Unfortunately, Professor Mathew Pagan may not make it to make a commentary, so definitely we will then take it forward as we discuss the presentation. Thank you so much. You are most welcome.
Grace, the most reverend Dr. Justin Badi Rama, the primate of the Episcopal Church of South Sudan, and the Metropolitan Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Juba. Your Grace Paul Yugusu, Bishop of the Central Equatorial Province, other bishops present here, the distinguished international delegates, the Episcopal fraternity, fellow vice chancellors present, and academics, colleagues from the University of Juba as well, Dr. Moses Monday John, the executive director of Organization for Nonviolence and Development, delegates from South Sudan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. A very good morning to you all.
Morning.
It is my great pleasure to join this illustrious government to contemplate on the main issues that are critical to enabling our communities to transition from conflict to harmony and peace. For blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Peace, as one may uncomfortably acknowledge, is more than just the absence of war. Peace has many moving parts, where each part is pulled by different actors. The outcomes are complex and unpredictable, and this provides peace researchers with a wealth of food for thought. All of them go off in their different directions, in frenetic search or holy grail that, once found, promises to ensure our communities and nations will live in peace and harmony. And unfortunately, the metrics of what we may call peaceful coexistence among communities are never constant, but are constantly changing all the time with the shifting expectation of the people and stakeholders. And that can be a source of frustration. The British statement, Stanley Baldwin, we are told, devoted his entire political life trying to understand the Irish question. However, he reckoned when he thought he has found the answer to the Irish question, the Irish had changed and we faced communities. Like 10 and women, of course, trying to describe an elephant. We in this hall and over the next few days can only strive to present just a small perspective and answers to what is essentially an intractable question. However, joined together, we might, I hope, be able to have a better understanding of what it might take for our communities to transition from communities bounded by conflict to communities of the beloved. I would like to focus on the economics of peace and as economics as a driver of conflict or the lack of it. Aristotle postulated that poverty is the parent of revolutions and crime, and may add art of wars and conflict. The drivers of poverty in my country include displacement due to insecurity and floods and communal violence, mass unemployment of youth, and even distribution of national cake and economic opportunities between different sectors of society, between different age groups, between urban and rural communities, between regions and within regions, between different ethnic groups, between men and women, and between girls and boys, as young as they may be. To be peaceful and harmonious, different actors do play their part in different realms. Prominently, we know about the political realm, the province of the states, or what St. Augustine described as the city of man. By coercive measures, the state forces the society to organize itself and to stay at peace with one another and to protect itself against external aggression. But also, we have the realm of values, and that is represented prominently by the church, but also the mosque and the temple. But also, they are joined by the school, the civil society, and the family itself. Here, the actors use persuasion and incentive as opposed to force and violence to shape our values and our belief systems and ultimately define who we are, what we are, who is in we, and who is the other. This realm, especially described in the church as used to be, is called by St. Augustine the city of God. We have another important realm, the third one, and that is the realm of markets, where, according to Adam Smith, an individual, while working to advance their own interests, ends up advancing the interests of the entire society. Actors are individuals and firms involved in exchange of goods and services. Increasingly, this modern state plays the role of a facilitator, an enforcer of contract, and the security of property in the markets. These three realms interact to shape the distribution of wealth in society. Therefore, ensure peaceful coexistence or the lack of it. And in the medieval Europe, feudal Europe, monarchs in alliance with the church and the aristocracy shaped society and decided the distribution of wealth and power. In the advent of the republics and democracies, the middle and the working class are able to check the excesses of the state and as well as the markets to maintain peace. However, the church, the civil society, the family have been pushed somewhat at the margin in the republic. Looking at South Sudan, it appears that the markets and the polity are in alliance against the realm of values or the city of God, where civil society also finds itself. And this is not feudalism, as it happened in the medieval Europe, but plutocracy. Here, very few exercise power behind closed doors. They decide who holds the delicate finance, who goes to central bank, who is having what power. Wealth is transferred, according to this system that we have, to very few through inflated contracts. And I do believe that plutocracy, those who have money and power, will lead to aristocracy, and I call that children who studied outside the country, they speak good English, they have money in their pocket. But through education, down the line, they will be joined by middle class, whose mobility is enabled by education and the skills that they have. They will be able to climb. And only then will we have in our country anything like a republic, although we call ourselves that at this moment. I don't think we are there. But that is the path. That's our path. From feudalism, from plutocracy to the democracy and republic. That is the path we are going to take. Now, what can a state do to foster transition to community of the beloved? I think there's plenty. Let's take from Ashraf Ghani, former president of Afghanistan. We call him an academic in chief. He listed 10 functions of the state. And I go through them very quickly. Monopoly on the legitimate use of violence. Only the state can decide who has rights, not anybody taking laws into their hands. Administrative control of all territory. There shouldn't be any armed actors out there who can do as they will. Sound management of public finance, investment in human capital, education and training, creation of citizens' rights through social policies and social safety nets, such as pensions, health and social insurance, etc. Provision of infrastructure services, the roads, power, sewage systems, waste management, provision of clean drinking water, and so forth. Formation of market by enforcing contracts and helping the formation of private enterprises, setting the standards of protection of properties and rights. Thank you. Formation of the market, I said, through enforcement of contracts, formation of private enterprises, setting the standards and protection of property rights, including the security of land tenant, management of public assets, including land, forests, cultural heritage, environmental protection, and sustainable development. Dr. Moses just mentioned something when it was about to go wrong. We all felt that our dearest resources, water resources, will not be protected. Future generations were being jeopardized. That is when the state wants to have projects that are not filtered, that are not well studied. Effective public borrowing. I allow you to reflect how much we borrowed and how much we are able to sell the oil in advance up to 2029. So we don't have any income coming from oil. Call it responsible borrowing. It's your choice. Providing sovereignty deficit. Now, this is what, if it is a sovereign state, for instance, we need to ask, what are the blessings that came to our citizens after they voted to leave the country? And there are so many jokes there, whereby in Khartoum, where the displaced are, the place is called Sorry Bashir. That is really a sovereign deficit as opposed to sovereignty dividend. Now, according to Ghani, the state delivers on the 10 functions. If the state delivers well on the 10 above functions, it can lead to a virtuous cycle, or otherwise it leads to a vicious cycle where we are caught between peace and violence, and then the cycle continues. And I have to say that there has been peace in the country, despite you get instances of violence from time to time. And the indication is that since 2016, after the dogfight, I have not been able to go out after 8. I always 8, I'm in the room. Until recently, I had to attend a wedding, and I was forced by the organizers that I should close it. And I was horrified with my family, with me and my little daughter. The time was now past 11, and it went until it was 2:30 in the morning when the wedding closed. Now, driving back home with my family, I was very surprised and pleasant. Found that the road was full of walking people. Juba. People were walking in the morning. Recently, there was a picture of young people that were actually partying up to early morning. You can see a sea of them happy. You can also see what is happening to the culture. The culture is moving and in a very creative manner. Now, this is support the idea that even bad peace is better than just war, because peace can create its own momentum, and people don't wait; they create their own things, their own spaces. Now, for the state to be effective in delivering the 10 functions listed by Ashraf Ghani, I have actually come to identify 5 critical elements and components. I call them 5 pillars. 1, competent civil service that is underpinned by the rule of law. It is the alpha and the omega of good things. Destroy civil service and you destroy almost everything. A centralized planning system and hopefully a decentralized implementation. Our cabinet approves anything that comes along. And you want to buy drones for $2 million to fight locusts, approved. You want to start commodity exchange market enterprise, $4 million, approved. And so forth. We want to organize games for this African community, approved. But nobody asks, after everybody has done this, how much is in the basket? Have you taken too little or have you taken too little? The idea of centralized planning is important, a common kitchen. And after that, you can decentralize. So that is a pillar number 2, which is essential for our government to be able to deliver on the 10 functions. Third is coordination of all levels of government. You know what happened when the dredging project, water project in the Sudan was approved by the Ministry of, by the Council Cabinet. It was the Ministry of Water trying to, in the name of fighting floods. The Minister of Environment was never consulted. But also they talk about navigation. The Minister of Transport was never a party, because eventually they call it cleaning the waterways, but actually it was deepening the river basin so that water can go. That was a problem, clearly, of failure. The President was saying that they have not approved it. Coordination is the third pillar. Effective and efficient revenue mobilization system. You know what it is. And it is really the foundation. At one point, they said, treasury. King is a treasury, and treasury is the king. There is no state that can. We can never have a territorial control if we cannot tax our people efficiently and deliver services. Fifth and last, investment in human capital formation through education, building of capacities, funding of research to inform policy, and imparting of technical and vocational skills. This is important in peace. Lack of skills, you may be aware, has caused communities used in Eastern Equatoria, used in Northern Upper Nile, used to actually be hostile to the end use, because they think they are. But if they don't have skills, they have a dilemma. They cannot access the jobs. Now, I really want to also move quickly to idea of the welfare state. Why it is there for a state to take care of the poor and such the disabled and the vulnerable, such as children, homeless children. And this can help the state, the country live in peace. Tim Harford, in his 50 Things That Made the Modern Economy, he traces the ascendancy of welfare state to Otto von Bismarck, who wanted to prevent the poor public from embracing the communist ideas articulated by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Mussolini in Italy provided, earlier in 1930, provided social safety nets to the poor in order to reduce the appeal of the socialist owners. And following the Great Depression, Francis Pagan, the Secretary of Labor of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, implemented what was described as the New Deal, in which for the first time the government guaranteed a minimum wage for all the workers, provision of unemployment benefits, and pension for the elderly. Today, in the Western societies, the welfare state, different versions, keeps these countries in the global north in peace, although not a perfect one. It now includes the elaborate pension systems, health insurance, disability allowance, and social security benefit for the unemployed. The challenge for South Sudan regarding the welfare state, the community of the beloved, if we need to transition to that. There are challenges, and there are things that might help. Now, the low-wage public sector does weaken the state. Imagine a civil servant receiving $40 as the wage, and then you expect them to negotiate $200 million contract. Will they not be compromised? How will you administer the justice if judges are underpaid? How will you treat people in hospitals if doctors are unemployed? There is also the politicized civil service, which I said is the top pillar. A country with good civil service will be able to design policies that will be effective in addressing societal problems, but it's been politicized. Every politician, every party that owns a docket of a ministry will try to bring somebody from their own party as the civil servant under Secretary and Director General. That's serious. The lack of system of pensions, health insurance, and social insurance. Now, you know very well that wages in the Republic of South Sudan were very high in 2020. Over the years, they have been eroded by the inflation. Because of an ineffective civil service, they have not been able to adjust the salaries. The salaries responded while the market move on. Now, at the University of Juba, we tried, and Dr. Angelina is here, we form a group to try to help the government to adjust the salaries. Now, when we were doing analysis, we found that the fraction of the wage bill, public wage bill, as a percentage of public of the expenditure has declined, and as a percentage of the revenue has declined. Now, it used to be 78% up to 2015. Now it is about 17%. In Kenya, the share of wage bills, public wage bills, as percentage of expenditure remained at 51% and went to 48% when the COVID hit. In the US, I look at it, in 2007, the wages and wage-related formed 63% of the public wage. It really means the country, the income, first you have to pay people for the wage. People leave in the morning and give their time up to evening to exchange the leisure for wage. So it's the people, the households that actually move the market. You are not paying them, you have an issue. And this is the challenge. We found also large ghost army, twice the one in Nigeria. Our army, double the one in Nigeria. 400,000. Nigeria has 200. 4 times the one of, and Nigeria is 200 million people. Ethiopia is about 90 million people. But ours is 3 times the one of Ethiopia. Is about 6 times the one of Tanzania. Ghost army, that has become a source of insecurity because they don't really actually exist. And those who exist are low paid. Lack of land property rights. You know what? It's very easy for the South Sudanese, and some of you may have to swallow the bitter. For South Sudan to get land, buy land in Khartoum, especially before we separated, that the South Sudanese to get a land here in Juba. Why not? But you touch it, it's mine. You touch it, it's mine. But you don't know the way. There is no way how you can acquire the land. It is the mother of land grabbing. It's the mother of conflict. Your own land is not secure because it will be grabbed. Even if it is your own. The displacement and conflict between the displacement caused by insecurity in some places and floods is causing problems between pastoral communities and farming communities in Equatoria. We know about that. Juba need to be fed with meat and vegetables. We need vegetables. We also need meat. And these communities need to provide them. How can they actually stay together? That's a challenge for the states to do that. The American Wild West was not cultivatable until the barbed wire. Somebody came up with a barbed wire that would keep animals away from the farm. I proposed it one time, and my colleague asked me to apologize. He said, "Well, how could you say that?" But we need to face our challenges and demons. The rule of law and enforcement of contracts, I said, is an issue. Partly, the judges are underpaid, seriously. They have no budget. If you have to do a persecution, you have to persecute, you have to buy fuel. There were cases here. A high-level case could not take place because there was no fuel in the vehicle to take the prisoner from the prison to. That undermines the rule of law. You have a case, say, of a land, and there are a lot of people actually have to fight it with their hands. The same thing, the University of Juba is actually facing the land between the university and us. And we are just quarreling, and nobody will come. This land was given to university and is registered with say certificate, and yet this Minister of Housing in Central Equatoria is giving it away to private individuals. One time I actually clashed with one of our sisters and mothers. I said, "Mom, what are you doing here? You are giving up, this land doesn't belong to you, doesn't belong to me, doesn't belong to our president, it belongs to your children, your grandchildren, and mine. This is where we need to look at. You are selling it out. She said, no. But that is the situation. Taxation as a source of is being used as a source of extortion, as opposed to being source of revenue distribution. Protection of environment and natural asset, forests and animals. Pig is being, animals are being killed and so on. This is the challenge. Broken family system of the ruling elites, because people are working somewhere else, their families are working somewhere else. Drug and alcohol abuse by the youth. Now, I really want just to give you 1 minute of resilience of University of Juba as my final remarks. Now, University of Juba is a good case of resilience in the face of, we witnessed 2016, and I came to hold the administrative position just about less than 4 months from 2013. It was in March. So there were still bombs going off. Up to April 2014, they were still going bang. You hear them here and there. And then 2016 was very bad. And yet we have never closed university except the day of war and when settled. We had plans. So when hurricane came, we went to hiding. And when the dust settled, we came out and we took the steps forward. And as a result, we were able to make a lot of change. We were able to stabilize academic year. We were able to not closing, the students could not fight among themselves as it used to be. We were able to bring back graduation ceremony. We do annual graduation ceremonies after 12 years of absence. We were able to improve the staff salaries despite the fact that the civil servants' salaries was very low. We decided to actually have inflation index salaries. The Vice Chancellor has to manage change at the University of Juba. You know what? Everybody, institution, they are always comfortable with what they have. And I had to change that for them. The number of students have increased from about 10,000 to close to 30,000. The infrastructure has improved. We were able to maneuver our way out of very low fee to actually reasonable fees, and that was conflict. And we were able to improve infrastructure and manage waste at the university. We are able to support individuals who are actually going through difficulties, social difficulties. And what was the outcome? The outcome is a community almost of the beloved. The Vice Chancellor, when I came in, I was regarded as outsider, coming to destroy what we have. At the moment, when I go around, the looks from the students, the look from the staff is one of love and respect. I could not do it alone because I do nothing, but by identifying the teams and by consulting at every step that we do. Recently, last few months ago, we passed staff social support fund. And I have to tell you about insurance and the lack of health insurance and the lack of pension is a really serious problem. You know, our health system is paid out of pocket. You go to hospital, you are paid by a huge bill. Now, imagine the car industry would not have been possible without insurance. Imagine you are driving and then you hit somebody's cars and you have to repair it through insurance. But also to have out-of-pocket system of health is extremely not responsible. And as we said, among the 10 Council of State is actually making social rights and security. It's the state that organizes society, even sometimes forcing people to help themselves. And so that there are shared goods that are actually made available for all of us when we need it, whether it means health, it means, being able to have something to support us when we are ill or when we come to work. And for those vulnerable children, the orphans and the homeless, and also mentally ill. You see them roaming around. So my friends, yes, peace has started, but we have a lot of job to do addressing these gaps. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Prof. Let's give a round of applause to Prof. Once again. Thank you for that. In the interest of time, I'm going to give my time to my sister Elavie to present. And then later we'll have some comments and questions and maybe clarification from the panel. Sister Elavie, you are most welcome.
See, I told you in Africa he was my boss.
It's my single pleasure to welcome Professor Elavie from America. Prof, you're welcome to make your presentation. And yes, you're taking your time. Yeah, make sure you're okay. Yeah, thank you.
You can breathe for 1 second. We have been fed quite well, so that we can see we can connect to the projector.
Yes. How complicated? Yeah, complicated.
So here, Charles. Because in order for it to be live streamed, something has to be in front of you. So is that where you're going to be?
Yeah. I'll be this way.
Okay.
All right. Still good morning. Good morning, friends. All protocol observed. Thank you, Charles, for sharing your time. I was thinking about what I can share in a few minutes without overspeaking. To address the theme of the conference in this plenary with a focus on emerging issues in African peace research and interdisciplinary as well as transnational perspective. And I was hoping to be able to look forward because the plan was that my brother Charles was going to kind of discuss trends in peace scholarship, in peace building and education, and I was going to follow up with a future focused. So I think currently the trends, everyone who has spoken from the Archbishop to Professor Akec has really in a major way talked about the trends in peace research and peace education and peace building. So I'm going to focus my brief remarks on elevating peace building to new heights and kind of attempt to take a future focus approach. If there are any errors, forgive me because I did this at 3 o'clock this morning. So I was thinking about history. I guess as I get older, I have a tendency to think about the past and history, what I have learned, what we have learned from readings, from writings, from stories that our parents told us and our grandparents told us growing up. And I think that history has revealed lessons about the nature and cost of human conflict. In the present, we work very hard to build upon this history, these lessons that we have learned in order to imagine resilient communities of peace and non-violence. And the skeptical me this early morning said to me, you know, confidence in peace, in a peaceful future remains unconvincing. And I think this is because what I heard when Victor from the Democratic Republic of the Congo was sharing with us yesterday at dinner, the conflict has reemerged in DRC. You know, when we watch the news, what's going on, Russia invading Ukraine, whenever you look around the world, it looks like we still have not learned from history. So what kind of future of peace can we create and how can we do that? So I really love the theme of this conference, from conflict to beloved communities, because this theme inspires future-focused questions. We have done lots of work individually and collectively. People like Mathew have been doing this work since they were born, and yet there is still need for more work to be done. So what are the new questions that we can add to the current questions that inspire our scholarship and education processes so that we can move an inch forward one more time? And I came up with the 3 questions here. Number 1, what unfinished business do peace scholars and educators need to address to tame the existential threat to sustainable peace in African communities? You see, when the civil war began in Burundi, by the way, I came from the United States, but I'm a global citizen. I still have a home in Burundi. I go back and forth. People reacted with shock that neighbors were killing neighbors with machetes, with sticks, hammers, whatever they could find. They were shocked. But there was so much violence happening. The same thing across the river in Rwanda. People acted with shock. And I'm sure people are still acting with shock in DRC everywhere you look around the Great Lakes region. So this question is very important because I don't think we have addressed this in the research that we have published, in the trainings that we have facilitated across the continent of Africa and beyond. The questions of unfinished business. That becomes a major trigger, a major driver of violent conflict. Question number 2. I like this one too. What inconvenient truths about others and other communities do we, as African and Pan-African peace scholars and educators, need to confront to model sustainable paths to peace and non-violence? Inconvenient truths. Do you know that it's easier to write a book or an article, or run even a longitudinal research study and publish and become famous without ever having touched on inconvenient truths? So I would like us to come home, as Nathan would say before, come back home to yourself, come back home to ourselves and wonder what inconvenient truths we have not confronted. Are we still looking at some communities as lesser than? Are we still devaluing languages that other people use to communicate as lesser than? Are we still looking at the other ethnic groups, the other religious groups as lesser than? But because we are so smart and strategic, we just keep researching and publishing a lot of papers and books about peace and peace education, peace building, without ever telling ourselves the truth. So I'm challenging us today to begin the process of going there, looking inwards, to reconnect honestly with these inconvenient truths about others in other communities. Question number 3. The theme is about beloved communities, but what does a beloved community look like? Many people have talked about that, and in the 60s, Dr. Martin Luther King really made it even more widely discussed and addressed. What's a beloved community? Some people will say it's a community where everyone is safe, everyone has something to eat, there is no hunger, everyone feels safe, they have a sense of belonging, they have healthcare, basic needs are met. But is that enough? What are we doing? Because when the book that Matt and others are talking about is going to take shape and form, we will have to answer this question in the introduction. What does a beloved community look like, sound like, feel like, taste like? So we have to go there. Truth. We have a few minutes, but I wanted to call your attention to something that's cultural. I took a picture because I did not have space in my suitcase to bring the real thing. I submit to you that the first foundation to building a beloved community is human interdependence, because the cornerstone This slide is particularly appropriate because this afternoon we'll be commemorating Bishop Tutu's memories and his contributions to peace and reconciliation in South Africa and everything that he taught us in his lifetime and even currently. So if you could please pay attention to this beautiful basket. In the culture, I got this basket in Burundi, and during the war, many women lost spouses. And Burundi, just like almost everywhere in Africa, when a woman loses a husband, it's like society looks at them like, okay, what are you going to do now? As if they have lesser value. So somebody had the foresight of teaching those widows how to make baskets so that they could sell them and generate income to take care of themselves and their orphans. So I always travel very far in the mountains, in the hills, to find those women's groups to buy their baskets. I say to myself, I don't have much to give them, but if I can keep buying their baskets, at least I'm making an intentional contribution to their well-being. But this basket is on this slide because it's a symbol of human interdependence. In the culture where it was made, when you go pay a visit to a relative or a neighbor, a colleague, you don't take the easy way. You go through a lengthy, deliberate reflection, trying to figure out what you have that you could share with your host to improve, to support their well-being. When you landed a decision, then you fill a bigger basket and you carry it to their home. You don't say, hey, I only have 12 pounds today or 12 francs for those of us who use francs or dollars. Therefore, I'm just going to stop quickly for 5 minutes at the grocery store, pick up whatever I can afford with the 12 pounds that I have. That's not how it works. It's deliberate, it's intentional. And I think this morning we have heard about intentionality since we convened at 9 o'clock here. So they deliver the goods. When it's time to bid the horse farewell, the horse goes through the same process of reflection about what they have that they could gift the guest to support their and their family's well-being. And then they refill the basket. So this basket goes back and forth as a symbol of human interdependence, a symbol of intentionality in doing good for the other person. I also like it because it's a symbol of capacity when you are intentional, that everyone can do something to elevate the well-being of another person, regardless of how little we have, because it's intentional. So I have named this basket the Ubuntu basket. Ubuntu. It's not an imported concept. You know, we own this concept of Ubuntu. It's an African philosophy. I am because you are. He is because I am. Turn to each other, by the way. You know, look at the person next to you and repeat that. Hey, you are because I am. You are because I am. Okay? Come on, don't escape. Yeah, I appreciate the smile, but I also hope you are internalizing the depth of this. Because, no, but as researchers, as scholars, we write these lengthy papers, and the more we produce, the further we are distancing ourselves from humanity. We hide ourselves between our books and our papers. So today, and especially on Mondays, I don't know if it's Monday, I think I've been scheduled to facilitate a workshop. Those walls, those masks will have to come down to do peace building, peace scholarship from within. Okay? Because I think this is one of our unfinished businesses. So Desmond Tutu shares with us that a person with Ubuntu is open and available to others, affirming of others, does not feel threatened that others are able and good, for they have a proper self-assurance that comes from knowing that they belong in a greater whole, and are diminished when others are humiliated or diminished, when others are tortured or oppressed. I use this quote so many times in my diversity training, and every time I read it, it still hits me very powerfully. What this means is, when we fail to elevate the well-being of our neighbor because they believe in a different faith, because they look different, because they're taller and we are shorter, because they are wealthier and we have less, because they belong to a different ethnic group or a different part of the country, we are losing part of ourselves. I don't think we have gone that far in our peace research, peace scholarship, and peace education work. When we oppress each other on whatever basis, we are losing a part of ourselves. I don't think the Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda realized that. I don't think the Tutsis ever realized that in Burundi when they massacred hundreds of thousands of Hutus in Burundi in 1972 and buried them in mass graves. I don't think they were thinking like that. I don't think they were thinking about that when they bombarded schools with children in them. Right here at home where we are, in South Sudan, in Sierra Leone, I don't think white folks were thinking they would lose anything by oppressing people of color and black people in South Africa under apartheid. Oh, I'm getting chills, so this must be true. So think about it. How we need to transform our thinking and the ways in which we conceptualize peace scholarship and peace education of the future. Humanize it, make it our own journey. So, my friends, based on what I have already shared, I'm confirming that peace begins at home. And this is not, it's much more than just having inner peace, which most of us have read about. We learn of peace, we preach of peace. But do we live peace? Do we live peace? Peace building with a future focus calls for transformation. That's deliberate change. But transforming what? We are smart, we are educated. Some of us have been blessed with major responsibilities. Do you think the Archbishop here needs to transform anything? He's at the top of a whole church in the whole province. You know, that's why I smile when we use these big titles like Professor, Vice Chancellor. Give me a break. You know, those titles do not instantly transform us to become the peace builders of the future. That's bad news, huh? That's bad news, isn't it? So, what do we need to transform? Maybe some assumptions. So this week then, as we have conversations with each other, let's be intentional in checking on our assumptions. Maybe transforming by connecting and covering our blind spots. I do have blind spots. Everybody has blind spots. You know, it took Victor, who's a gender expert today, to notice that we had just demonstrated a major blind spot when we went to take a picture outside. Did anyone notice the picture we took, how we positioned ourselves in the picture? No? What did you notice?
Equality,
Okay, say more.
no discrimination.
You say more.
One.
What was missing? Blind spot.
Yeah.
Now, who noticed something other than Victor? Yes, Mark, right.
Well, it happened to be that we had a little very nice and comfortable boys group
Yes.
sitting down in the front row,
Yeah,
no girls allowed.
yeah, yes. And no one made noise.
No, I did.
Who did?
Yes, I did.
You did?
I did, but I realized that maybe it's because of position. So
Oh.
just put yourself there.
I
The
see.
first thing I could have done is to stand behind them. So
Yes.
that we can say, at least we're there.
Okay. Thank you, sister. What's your name, sister?
Dr. Angelina.
Hey, next time, call it out.
And by the way, that I believe is called strategy.
Yeah, actually I pushed myself in there, but
Yes.
you know, at the end of the day, when people be looking at the photo,
Yes.
we actually say, look, we are actually deputizing. We're taking the second chance as opposed to the first crowd. It's a leader.
Yes.
I had that interpretation,
Good.
like thinking, but then I couldn't question because I was like, you can't invade the space.
Now, remember we learned to trust each other? Now, let's be candid. We're okay. We're going to be vulnerable together. Raise your hand if you did not notice that. It's okay. Raise your hand if you did not notice. There is one hand, there is another hand. Yes. Yeah. You see, we are just a bunch of people. We are human. So for us to become the peace builders of the future, we have to uncover the blind spots. That was minor. We have to, anyway. So, another transformation, human relationships. You know, you would think that after spending a week together here, that the relationship that we have with each other would have matured. I still hope we still have time. Today is only our first time, our second day for most of us. But what do we talk about? Oh, what's your next project? What's the next book? Raise your hand if you have checked on somebody and say something like, hey, Jean-Pierre, how are you really doing today? Raise your hand if you check meaningfully on somebody. Oh, nice. How did you do that?
Well, in the morning when I met Sienna,
Yeah.
so I asked her, how do you sleep?
Yeah.
And she told me she slept well.
Okay, and then you kept walking.
Well, she asked me the same question.
And you both kept walking.
Yeah. And
So,
then,
that's good. That's better than nothing.
but we actually had a lot of discussion after
Oh,
that.
yeah,
And,
tell us more about
after,
this.
after eating,
Yes.
she also got her meal and then came, we sat and had a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
About other things.
So you actually connected as human beings.
Sure.
On Monday, I don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday, the date is in the books, in the program, we'll be learning more about how to be intentional in connecting with each other and the various experiences we have lived that have gotten us to this point. So don't miss it, okay? We have to make it real. I'm almost there. Technology and social media to create a beloved community. When I took my new job, when I interviewed for my current job of Vice Chancellor for Equity and Inclusion, and I met with the soon-to-be my new boss, I asked her a question towards the end of our conversation, and the question was this one. If I were to be the selected candidate for this position, what are the top 3 things that you would like me to start working on day one? I want you to get a sense of her vision. And she answered very fast. Number 1, community building.